Hello everyone, my name is Peter Schaknat. I am the Managing Director of Schaknat Electronic GmbH, and today we are optimizing a Mercedes-Benz Actros 1853 Edition 2. Today we have a really awesome truck here, a Mercedes Actros Edition 2. Let's take a quick look at it together. As you can see, only 400 units of this model were made. This is an Actros MP5 1853, an OM471 engine in its most powerful version with 530 horsepower and 2,600 Newton meters of torque. So the engine is available from 420 to 530 horsepower with 2,100 Newton meters at 420, and as just mentioned, up to 2,600 Newton meters. I always say, we all got a bit of the Scania bug, but honestly, this is truly a beautiful vehicle. Even when it comes to the details, I really, really like it. I have to say, I would even drive it myself. Maybe I'd even buy one for myself because it really is a very, very well-made vehicle. It also comes with a pretty full set of features. I once took this one for a few laps around the yard, even with electric steering. So you could already feel it when aligning on the test stand. It tracks really well, perfectly straight. Honestly, you can steer it with just 2 fingers. So like I said, I'm really excited to do some measurements now. Today we're going to optimize the vehicle again with the Schaknat App. They already have hardware D5 control units, brand new, or 6EG software versions. With our app, you don't have to remove any control units or open anything up. You can really just connect directly to the OBD port, because a lot of customers have asked me about this. At one of our competitors, you actually have to access the control units underneath or even open them up. That's not the case with our app. You can really just connect directly to the OBD and flash right away. We can store the software versions, and then we can get started right away. We'll do the initial measurement again, then we'll optimize the vehicle using the app. I'll show you that again as usual. Afterwards, we'll do the final measurement and take a look at the results. The vehicle has about 20,000 or 25,000 kilometers on it. So as you can see, it's basically still in the break-in phase, you could say. I'm really curious myself to see what it has now. As you can see, like I said, painted rims, really nicely done. There's already quite a lot of standard equipment. What I also really like is the side paneling here. The customer has complete sets installed in the back, and it's also equipped with a trailer hitch and everything needed, so he is able to transport a wide variety of things. For example, regular trailers and so on. So it's for his own internal use to maybe transport things, pick up cars or whatever. Now we're going back. We've already unstrapped the back. Andre already did that. We're measuring again in 4WD. With the new MP5, it's really important to measure in 4-wheel drive as well, because otherwise, with all their distance sensors, with Mercedes, they're really at the forefront when it comes to safety technology. So when it comes to things like distance sensors, emergency braking assistance, or lane keeping assistance, in my opinion, Mercedes is simply leading the way. They also have the best systems in that area, but to simulate this properly, we're measuring again in 4-wheel drive. As I said, we also drive the front axle hydraulically so that we have a 100% road simulation. So I'd say let's do the initial measurement. Andre has now done the initial measurement. Let's take a quick look at it together on the screen now. You can see it up here now. Let's take a quick look at it. We measured once in 11th gear and once in 10th gear. The truck is supposed to have originally 2,600 Newton meters of torque and 530 horsepower. You can see it now in 11th gear. We measured in 10th gear. In 10th gear, 491 horsepower and 2,470 Newton meters. And in 11th gear, almost the same in 11th gear. So you can see, in terms of torque, it's missing about 100 Newton meters. But you also have to mention the truck only has 20,000 kilometers on it. It's quite possible you could overlook a brief break-in phase if it only has a low number like 50 to 60 kilometers on it. it could be, but doesn't have to be, that the adaptation will increase it a bit more, maybe by 50 to 60 Newton meters. But based on experience, what I've noticed from measuring is that from 0 kilometers on, not much has changed. Still, the truck drives well and the torque lasts a long time. You can see, again, from 900 up to almost 1,450, there's maximum torque. And then it starts to drop off. The customer told me he wants good performance. Fuel consumption is now a decisive factor. It should run smoothly. But most of the time, the more power and torque I have available, the more power, the more fuel efficient I can drive. Of course, that's obvious. I can use the higher gears while driving and lower the engine speed. Every revolution needs a fill, so the lower the RPM, the less fuel is needed. Now we're going to go ahead and flash the ECU, then we'll walk around right away. Andre is going to do that now. Here you can see the app again, just as usual. We're opening the box again. So first we take out the adapter, and you'll find that just like with Scania or many other manufacturers, Mercedes also has its OBD connector located at the bottom right. Again, be sure to insert it gently, not with a lot of force, because the delicate pins can often get bent. So really don't just jam the connector in, but do it gently. So now let's go ahead and connect the adapter. It's called OBD Link MX. As you can see, we already have several plugged in, so you can use multiple adapters with one phone, then the other person opened the app. It's always the same principle, as we said. Turn on the ignition, plug in the adapter, then open the app. You see, we've now gone into the engine control unit. Here we have the individual parameter sets. In the engine control unit, we also have the transmissions included, as well as the optimizations. I've stored a special version for the customer. As you can see, we can store a custom version for customers if there's something specific they need. We often also have electric trucks with heavy-duty transporters, for example, with turbo retarder clutches. You can also play around with the torque values here. Sometimes, for example, with garbage trucks, if we want to make sure the starting torque with clutches isn't too high, we can always set that individually here. The customer said he wants good performance. We now have a 400 plus version, that's what we call it internally. We really put in some work there to see what kind of performance is possible, but he still always has the option to go back to the original. The eco optimization is 200 Newton meters for this one, and the power optimization is 300 Newton meters. So, as I said, let's just take a look at the output measurements now. The other one is now going to flash the 400 plus version. Then we just press the button. Then the app asks again, do you really want to confirm? We select yes. And now the app starts programming. It's really important, as I always tell customers, please don't interrupt anything, don't do anything silly, don't take a phone call, don't walk away from the car. Just leave the car alone for the 2 or 3 minutes it takes to flash. You see, it goes pretty quickly. The app then confirms this with a green check mark. Then the app automatically goes back and performs a reset for the control units. So once you see the green check mark, we've basically finished with the engine control unit as well. Now you could hear it in the background, that clicking sound, that's the control unit resetting. All right, now let's go back into the engine control unit. Now we'll go ahead and optimize our transmission. People often ask me whether when they flash the engine to power, they should also set the transmission to power or to eco. Can you vary that? With us, it's like this. When we program the transmission to eco, we try to give the transmission the impulse to shift up early. You can absolutely set the engine to power and the transmission to eco, then you'll have a lot of torque at low revs and the transmission will just shift up early. For example, if I have tippers or heavy-duty transports, it might actually be better to set it to power so that it doesn't shift up too early, so the gears really rev out, and so that we don't drop too far below the connecting engine speeds, which would cause the engine to start struggling again. Now we're going to set the transmission to eco here. It asks again to execute, which goes relatively quickly. Again, a green check mark. Then it automatically returns to the previous screen in the app. And what we've also added now, you can see the DTCs up here. We've now included all the control unit clusters. You can see the app here. We've also made it faster overall so that everything works more quickly and easily. We now have up to 40 control units that we can read and clear fault memories from. So you can see them here. All the control units. Now we're going to read out all the fault memories. As I mentioned, we somewhat underestimated the languages. We are currently in the process of expanding our language support to include French, English, Spanish, and Portuguese. This initiative is designed to ensure that our customers abroad can use the application in a much more effective, seamless, and intuitive way. Currently, we have P-codes with that's in English, and we'll translate it into other languages. You can see we have all the control units included here. Now we'll just go through the process step by step. We have the complete reset function. Now we will just go here in order to delete the error codes. Then it will proceed to delete the errors from all of the control units. You can see it here. It goes pretty quickly too. No errors present. Then we go back again. As you can see now, it is always important that when we are done programming, you do not just pull out the toggle, but actually go back once first. If you have a Mercedes, none, or a Volvo, as I've often said, you can swipe the app out of memory. That's not a problem. You can simply open it again afterwards. It always stays active. So you can see it up here. You can log out if you want, but we don't want to do that. So basically, that's just the function. And also, because a lot of customers always ask me, if you ever want to update an adapter, you can go to settings up here. There, you look for the adapter here. The adapter is now up to date, but if the adapter is outdated, for example, you could go here and it would say, attention, adapter settings are not correct, please perform an update, and then it will go through the process. So basically, you can also do this through the app. All right, once we're back in the start menu, we're done. We can unplug the adapter and then we can already perform the initial measurement. We've completed the initial measurements. As I said, as far as the bottles are concerned, you saw it, it's super easy, spot on. We've now done the measurements. Now let's take another look at the diagrams together. You can see the torque up here again. We have over 400, as it said, so a bit more than 400 Newton meters. And you can see it, as I said, we have just under 450 Newton meters more, so 2,470. So we had just under 25 before. And now we have just under 2,950, so 2,935. And 632.6 horsepower output. As you can also see here, we allowed the torque to rise once again down here and kept it up to a speed of 1,500 kilometers per hour. It is very important that we bring the engine's RPM down in a linear fashion at the top so we do not run into any potential exhaust temperature problems up there. As you know, the OM473 engine, the 50.6 liter engine from Mercedes, the powerful one. There are also 630 horsepower and 3,000 Newton meters. You can see we've now almost achieved that with a 12.8 liter OM71. So as I said, really great torque. But you still notice that the truck accelerates relatively smoothly. And as I always say, like I've mentioned in other videos, my upper limit is always around 13 liters of displacement, 600 horsepower, and 3,000 Newton meters. So that's basically the range we're always operating in. I would say whether it's a Volvo or maybe a Scania or now even the engines where you notice you can get up to 650 horsepower peak output, but still torque is the decisive factor. You don't want to overdo it so you don't overload the engines. The manufacturers often install these engines in industrial units with significantly more power, which is why we also use that as a reference for ourselves. I would say with engines, there tend to be fewer problems. Most of the time, it's really always the bottleneck with the drivetrains, the rear axle, or maybe even more often the transmission. You generally have fewer problems with engines anyway. As I said, I'm completely satisfied with the setup. I hope the customer feels the same way when he drives it. He said we should break the 600 mark, and we actually exceeded 600 horsepower by 30. So, as I said, I'm completely satisfied, and as you saw, everything worked perfectly again with the app. We've reached the end of our video about this really beautiful Actros. I have to say it's the most beautiful one I've seen so far. You can see it again here, and I hope it comes across well in the video too. Also with the lighting effects. It's truly a great vehicle, I really have to say that. You know the famous saying, Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. But of course, it's important to remember that every single brand has its own unique charm. I always say that too. Every car has its pros and cons. You can make any vehicle look stylish, whether it's an e-truck or a man. But I think my heart just beats a little more for Mercedes and Scania. That's just how it is. But as I said, I enjoy checking out all e-cars, I just have to say that. And so far, I've personally seen all of them very nicely and thoughtfully customized, so that's still completely independent of the brand. That was just a little joke on the side, by the way. If you're interested in this fascinating topic about engine and transmission optimization for the Mercedes Actros 1853 Edition 2, feel free to check out our website at www.schaknat.de. You can also watch our videos on YouTube, since a lot of people always ask how the app works. What is the whole process like? By now we also have a lot of explanatory videos and short clips that aren't too long, so you can quickly get an overview. But of course, you can still give us a call, send us an email, or reach out to us personally if you like. Thank you for tuning in, take care, and see you next time. Thanks, bye.